Welcome back, Feral fam. I'm excited. I don't know why. I'm gonna figure out this camera angle though. That's a little better. We're gonna figure this out though. Welcome back. Oh, I gotta get comfortable. Welcome back, Feral fam. It's been a month. Let's just put it that way. 2026 is starting out nice and heavy. Last episode, I told you guys I was going to dive a little more into some details of my childhood. And so that's what we're going to do. Got my notes. I don't even know how to start, because this topic has been most of us have been conditioned to keep our abuse silent, to protect our abusers, their families, and whatever they have going on that could potentially, interrupt their success or whatever they have going on. And so when we try to write down or tell a safe friend, you have to silence that condition that tells you that this is wrong. Because when in reality, sharing is the first step to healing. The very first step is telling someone. Instead of allowing the abuse to continue through silence, I will be speaking out. Plain and simple. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to be 31 years old, and not a lot of people know the actual details of my life and my childhood. My abuser is my family, not a singled out member. Which is hard to say, because there's so many levels of that when your entire majority of your family is the root cause of your abuse, and it's rough. Now that I've created my own family and that I have real love and understanding and support, I feel safe enough to share the truth of what happened in my childhood, instead of allowing the abuse to continue into my adulthood. I'm done. I'm going to be telling the truth of what my childhood was really like behind closed doors. I was born into chaos, manic mental disorders, a home that was already breaking, and everything that I thought that I remembered about my childhood before my parents' divorce was not a memory of my own. It was a warped story told to me to pretty much get me to stop asking questions. It has taken me years to try and figure out the lies from the truth, and I don't think it's a simple task. Like, you don't realize, like, some people think it's something as simple as filling out a family tree, but something as simple as filling out a family tree led to me having a mental breakdown and an identity crisis at 12. Like, that shouldn't happen. Abuse leaves little holes in your memory, and I didn't truly understand what my therapists were saying when in the moment of the abuse. But now that I'm actually safe and like doing the hard work of healing and not becoming a product of that abuse, I know now that my brain buried memories so far down deep that I haven't even uncovered all of them at 31. And just because I don't have all the pieces doesn't mean that I can't start putting this puzzle together. I mean, start with what I do remember, and maybe I'll fill in like pieces. Maybe I'll find out, will this deepen myself? Will I have a new understanding? And with this new understanding comes old memories that were in the dark for so long. I do know that my parents divorced I was very young. After my parents divorced, my father, my older sister, and myself moved from Illinois to California. And one of my favorite memories from that time was being able to live with my great grandmother and my great grandfather. Shortly after we moved in with them, I became my grandma's shadow, following her around, helping her with cooking and cleaning. I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, but I loved living with my great grandparents. But it was short lived. My father had met a new woman, and things were going okay enough for us to get an apartment with her. And I do remember crying once we were all packed up and like the car was pulling out of the driveway because I didn't understand. I wasn't told what was happening to me. I was just being told to do it. And so when we moved from grandma's, we moved into the new apartment. It was a 2 bedroom. California was the illusion of normal. That's the easiest way I can explain it. My dad remarried. They had another daughter. We loved her as our mother, and we loved our little sister as our little sister from day one. From the outside, our life looked normal. You know, band, sports, Girl Scouts, activities stacked on top of activities, family vacations, but I wasn't being nurtured. I was being managed. And I remember being so exhausted as a child, I would just fall asleep in my clothes, in my shoes, wherever my body landed. And I was being told these things were important, but in reality, they were just keeping me busy so that they were just keeping me busy so they didn't really actually have to answer the tough questions, do the hard work, and figure out who I am. The new apartment in San Andreas, it was fun. Like, it was our first, I would consider like our first family home that I remember. I was very young when my dad had remarried. I was the flower girl in their wedding, and I do remember how joyful that night was, their wedding night. I met cousins and uncles and aunts that I had only heard stories about, and for the longest time, I kept the dress that from their wedding stained with red punch all down the front of it. I kept it hanging up in my closet. Now that I'm 31, I really don't remember much of that night at all. Just pictures I was able to get my hands on over the years from family members that also attended. Um, they bought their first house together shortly after, and this move was the first time I experienced a move that I was actually happy about. Um, I felt like they communicated it with us very well. Like, the apartment, we're a growing family. The apartment's too small. New job, new opportunities. I was happy. I still didn't I didn't get my own room when we first moved in because um, our nana was going to be living with us, but it was our house. It wasn't someone's couch in the living room. It wasn't a tiny little 2 bedroom apartment up a million flights of stairs is what it felt like as a kid. Um, Not this time. It was a house with a backyard. Boy, did I have dreams as a kid. um, Big dreams as a young girl. I wanted to have a loving home that feels safe and that I can make memories in, and a new neighborhood with friends to play in. So I thought this was the good step towards that. First day of school, I think was first grade, because like I said, I went we're San Andreas, and so when we moved, it was new school, new house, new everything. And I remember waiting at the bus stop, and weird little Paige was ready for a fresh start. And luckily, I had met a very sweet girl my age, who I will not be naming to protect her and her family, but she became one of my best friends throughout my years in California. We both had a love for music and soccer and reading and arts, and we were in Girl Scouts together, and we set up our Girl Scout cookie stands to sell cookies together outside of our local stores around our town, and played years of soccer. One year, both of our teams had made it to a championship, and we were basically competing for one team to have first place and the other one to have second, and we just couldn't take it seriously. We both had made it as far as we did, and we didn't care who walked away with first or second at that point. We made it to championship games, so we didn't care, but we spent a lot of time together, okay? So much that our mothers ended up growing their own friendship through ours. Um, Honestly, if we weren't at their house for that weekend, they were at our house. We had family game nights and would celebrate birthday parties together and go on vacations together. And there were adult things going on behind the scenes that we had no clue about. And my father and stepmom filed for divorce, but I didn't understand why. It meant that I could no longer see my best friend. Oh, yeah, an affair was happening. I was 12 years old being told that I could no longer see my best friend, my childhood best friend. We were packing everything that we knew in boxes and packing an overnight bag. And once we spent the day or so packing up all of our things in our house and taking pictures off the wall, my older sister and I were told to go to our uncle's house for a few days. And I had no idea this was going to be the very last time that I would ever step foot in my childhood home. I had no idea what was going on. 4 years old to 12 years old, I had lived in that home, brought home our little sister from the hospital. We had holidays, sleepovers with my best friends. I didn't have my own room when we first moved in, but by the end of it, I had my own room built onto the home. And I really wish my father would have been honest with me that day and just allowed us a little time to process and to give us the truth of a major loss. Like, still to this day, I wish I could go and just sit in that backyard one last time. But through the divorce and through moving and through all of this, I learned at a very young age that my father carried a lot of anger, and he did not keep his hands to himself when he got emotional. Walls were punched, things were thrown, voices were raised, discipline crossed into violence. When friends weren't around and guests weren't in the home, my father's mask would come off, and he would be angry and hurt by someone or something that I knew nothing about. I lost count. I tried to count, but he would spank us from the back of my shoulders to the back of my kneecaps, like he didn't know where you were going to be hit or how long or how many or any of that. Another punishment he did was he would make us hold up the wall. You would have your back up against the wall, knees at a 90-degree angle, and you would have to have your arms straight out, and you would have to hold textbooks, and if you talked, Your time started over. If your knees buckled or moved out of that position, your time started over. If you dropped your books, you had to start over. Eventually, I would be reading the books, and I got in trouble. Because I wasn't supposed to be reading them, I was supposed to be holding them. I learned at a very young age that my feelings were inconvenient and that my needs were too much and that love can be taken away without warning. I now know I was physically abused, emotionally abused, and I was shaped by the absence of a mother, by the inconsistency, and by emotional unpredictability. I became the child who listens for footsteps, the child who reads tones, not just words, the child that learned that being quiet was safer than being seen. And no one sat with me in my tears and my bruises. No one taught me how to regulate my emotions, and most of all, no one noticed how early I stopped asking for help. Emotional abuse, I felt like it was more of me wanting to know about my birth mother, and everything that happened with my birth mother was hidden from me. We were simply lied to, avoided questions altogether, and with lies came anger. I didn't understand why we couldn't ask about our birth mother or even bring her up to friends. I didn't understand why we couldn't look at baby pictures growing up. It was something so simple as a photo album. Baby photo albums were kept from us. I would remember sneaking into my closet when everyone was gone just to look at baby photos. Yeah. It was an unspoken rule that we were not allowed to know anything about our mom. And of course I broke the rules. I had to. I had to see. I had to see what she looked like. I had to come to terms with the struggles that I was dealing with, that I was already having about my identity. And I look nothing like the people I was raised by. So of course I'm going to have questions. And of course I did look a little bit more like my birth mother at the time, but it was the not being able to ask questions, or the questions that I did ask were unacceptable. Like, it was too hard of a conversation, so it was unallowed. And that's not okay. I will always have tough conversations with my children and discuss things with them, obviously at an age appropriate level. But if they would have just sat down and listened to the handful of things that I was curious about and answered those simple questions in a way that I would understand, and maybe we could have, went back and talked about it the older I got, but at least I wouldn't have had the thought that I was adopted for years. But, no child should feel so different and so confused that they're living in a home with their blood relatives and they feel like they're not even their relatives. No one should be raised like that. I'm going to have to take a break. That one was a lot. So we're going to stop there at the divorce, because this is where I start to move around a lot. We start to reach out to family members because my dad needs help. They're selling the house in California. We're moving. They're getting a divorce. They're splitting assets. All the adult things that happened that I knew nothing of. And I was told to go hang out with this family member and hang out with that family member as a distraction. And eventually we did move in to our great aunt's house. It was my father's aunt's house in Nesbitt, Mississippi. And I think that's where I'm going to end this episode, because it's just easier for my brain to break it up a little bit into like where I lived and what happened with that abuse. So thank you for for listening, Feral Fam. This has been a rough journey, and I know it's taken a little bit of time to get these episodes together, but I really want to put it structured in a way that I not only am sharing my experience, but I'm healing from it. I need to be able to do it in my own way. I'm journaling, I'm doing the shadow work, I'm doing all of the things that come with diving into your mental health journey and figuring out what you need to do next. So for before I send you off, Feral Fam, we are going to I'm gonna give you a frequency to listen to for this evening. With it being February, we're gonna go with the love frequency. This allows you to just kind of lower stress related hormones and just pour into yourself a little bit. Give yourself some love, okay? So the frequency is 5 to 8 hertz. You can find more information about those on the previous episodes that I talk about healing frequencies. But 5 to 8 is the hertz that I'm going to end it out with today. So if you're needing a little bit of self-love, go ahead and tune in. They have different frequencies here on YouTube, and they also have different frequencies on Spotify as well. So as always, my Feral Fam, I want to hear from you, okay? I want to hear your spiritual stories. I want to hear your wild truths. I want to hear your feral moments. So please, as always, submit your feral stories to the email, which is feralfrequencypodcast@gmail.com. And you might have a chance to have your feral story read out here on a podcast. I have to get to my next job, so it is Thursday and I have body piercings I need to be getting ready for. So I hope everyone has a beautiful day. Remember February is for love. So self-love, family love, children, love your kids, love your spouse, love the people that deserve your love. As always, stay feral, fam.